This painting was made around 1655, in the aftermath of the Civil Wars and the execution of King Charles I. It was made, therefore, in a particularly tumultuous time in Britain's history, and it is a complex and moralizing painting. It depicts two individuals, but it is not a double portrait. Rather, it is a generalizing image that cautions against the sin of vanity.
Above the two is an inscription that is in the voice of the Black woman as she points to the white woman, admonishing her, "I black with white bespot, you white with black, this evil proceeds from thy proud heart, then take her devil."
England faced radical changes in the 1640s and 1650s. Following the execution of King Charles I, monarchy was abolished. 4 years of political experimentation followed until a republican regime under the leadership of Oliver Cromwell was established. This painting speaks to the fear and anxiety that developed after the civil wars and regicide. This was a time period that saw increased censure over women's activities and their bodies. These fears were readily apparent in popular contemporary print media and publications that discouraged the use of cosmetics and bodily adornment. In 1653, the High Anglican John Bulwer declared patching to be as odious and as senseless an affectation as ever used by any barbarous nation in the world. The use of these patches by white Christian women, it was feared, would blur the boundaries of race, nation, and religion, thereby further destabilizing the fabric of English society.
The painting is neither signed nor dated, and there is no record of its commission. However, we believe that for centuries, the painting was part of the collection of the Kenyon family in Lancashire, which is in the northwest of England. In 1657, Roger Kenyon, a lawyer and Member of Parliament, married Alice Rigby, and it's possible that the painting was commissioned to celebrate their marriage. The painting may have been displayed in their new family home at Peel Hall. Certainly, the focus on moral rectitude and the afterlife held personal relevance for Alice, who had lost all 3 of her siblings and her parents in the previous decade. The instructional message of this painting would have been appropriate to her new position as the female head of household. Now owned by Compton Verney, an art gallery and museum in Warwickshire, the painting travelled to the Yale Center for British Art in Connecticut so that it could be conserved and studied. At Yale, a detailed investigation of this unusual painting began with a technical analysis of the object as part of its conservation treatment. The research into this painting is part of a broader initiative at the YCBA to understand how artists in England in the 16th and 17th century used paint to depict various complexions.
Painting manuals of the period make recommendations for how to render different flesh tones. For white sitters, they suggest the synthetic pigments of red vermilion and blue smalt. Smalt imparted a cool luminosity to light complexions, while vermilion lent an artificial rosiness to their lips and cheeks. For darker tone sitters, manuals recommended natural earth pigments, like ochres and brown umber, with no mention of smalt or vermilion.
The technique seen in this painting suggests that the artist was not aware of contemporary literature on how to paint various skin tones. In turn, this suggests that the artist may have trained outside of London, which during this period was the major artistic centre in England. One candidate for the artist of this painting is the Catholic priest and Benedictine monk, Jerome Hesketh. It's telling that the families of Roger Kenyon, his wife Alice Rigby, and the painter Jerome Hesketh came from the same small, remote and rural part of Lancashire. This was a part of the country that had remained tight-knit, despite of the schisms caused by the recent Civil War. Signed works by Jerome Hesketh share characteristics in draftsmanship and paint handling that align with what we see in this painting.
What this painting tells us is that as early as the 1650s, a racial binary had already begun to form, and that whiteness was being positioned in opposition to blackness.
The conservation treatment has significantly improved the legibility of this painting, preserving it for future generations. However, there is much to be learned about how this painting was understood by its original patron and audience. Continued research into this painting will draw out further connections between the constructs of race and the painting practices of artists in this period.